Please welcome the wickedly talented one and only Adele Dazeem.
My wife's name out your fucking mouth!
There's a mistake. Moonlight. Best Picture.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Failed Award Contenders. I believe episode 6. We are here to talk
Return
about...
of the MANK.
I was going to say Citizen Kane, but yes, Return of the MANK. We're just here to talk about MANK. It's a failed award contender. Is it failed in our hearts? I'm my host, Diego Crespo. I forgot to introduce us because it's been a minute before we recorded again. I'm your host, Diego Crespo.
I'm the other one. I'm Matt Uringo. I'm recovering from COVID, so I might sound a little stuffy while recording this episode.
Well, that's okay, Matt, my co-host, because all old movies are stuffy and pretentious.
Yeah.
That's why they're in black and white.
Yeah.
And not because film didn't exist in color for a lot of the periods.
When I was little, I thought they filmed the Kansas part of Wizard of Oz before color was invented.
That was the myth. For what I remember anyways, there was like, oh, this was the first film in color, and so audiences were introduced to it this way. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And, that's a great legend. Not true. Color film existed before that. And just on that note, too, I didn't have this in my notes to bring up at all, but, since we're there, color tinting and such is, that existed.
Yeah, that goes way back to the silent era, beginning.
Yeah, that goes back to the 1800s.
They used to literally paint on film. That used to be the move,
Yeah, and then someone out there's like, oh, well, then that's not really color film. It's like, okay, well, fuck you. Color tinting without the painting aspect of it, color tinting still also existed. So fuck off.
It wasn't it just the leap to color wasn't this monumental thing people make it out to be.
Yeah.
Although
it just became another process.
What is the defining early color film? Can you think of one?
I'm just gonna Google it. What was the first color movie?
I think that's up for debate. But is there one that's that? That is the game changer. I mean, 1939 kind of is the year where it's it is Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind, which is that's a full-on color picture,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's everyone knows the Technicolor, right? That's the big fucking glamorous old Hollywood
3-strip Technicolor, baby.
Yeah, and that's why movies are so colorful back then. And not that everything needs to be super colorful, but
there is something that kind of rules about 3-strip Technicolor, though.
Oh no, I love it, and that's why. And it's the process to make it is it's not impossible, but it's well, we don't do it that way anymore. Which is why I really liked Pearl, because it was well, we have the methods to do it digitally now. And I was yeah, that makes sense to try that, because that's trying to be an old, it's clearly got a Wizard of Oz Disney vibe.
They did that digitally with Pearl. I didn't look into how Pearl was made at all.
I forget if they shot on film, but the look of it was enhanced digitally.
It looked pretty good. If that was the case, I wasn't thinking that at all while watching it.
Yeah, I think that's a terrific looking movie. X2, different vibes, different movies, but great looks to them.
Yeah, X also had a really good looking vibe to it.
Yeah. Also, they were made for super cheap, so it's hey, a lot of these fucking people out there have no fucking excuse. If you're a truly independent film, that's different.
We might be talking about a movie today that has no fucking excuse to look the way it does.
Okay. So, some last notes on the invention of color film that I'm pulling up at the last minute.
So this is what the Google algorithm, which we were just talking about just before recording, how bad it is. This is what This is what that decided to elevate first.
Well, no. Okay, so let me. I'll probably cut this out if it takes too long to find it. But there was discussion of color film versus black and white film recently on Twitter. Because someone was oddly enough on Wizard of Oz. Someone was like, "Oh, this is so low budget." It's one of those those snarky, cynical irony poison social media people
That
who was
is
like shitting on
truly a
Wizard of Oz.
deranged take to be like the Wizard of Oz looks low budget. Like,
I know, and then so someone quote tweeted it, "Bro, it was the first film in color," like which is we discussed not true, but a very funny quote tweet. And then there's an account I follow called Movie Silently that
Yeah, I follow them too.
basically just a great account, posts about the history
They go off
of
a
silent
lot.
film. They do,
Which
do.
in a way I appreciate more than those. So.
And so they mentioned that the first earliest commercially viable natural color without like the advent of like painting the frames and such was kinemacolor, which was a process that began being screened for the public in 1908. The Turner color process was earlier, but it didn't really work, and like the most modern footage we see of it was actually stitched together in Photoshop. So it's like it's not like true.
Yeah.
And then the
I guess there's
the
also
Technicolor.
I'm assuming because like there's that era of film where like you would go to like a movie house and there would be like a narrative comedy short, a movie, and then like nature footage and shit, right? Like where you just go to the movies and watch anything. So I'm assuming there was a long history of just that, like what today would probably be called like tech demos of color for a few years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's why, like, and this is another fucking tangent, but somewhat connected. But like when, like, I'll sometimes watch a movie, like maybe Avatar or something. I'm like, yeah, it's a really like impressive tech demo. Like, I don't mean it like in a negative fashion. I think some people do, and it was like, no, this used to be such a monumental event to be able to see fictionalized worlds that people bought into, that they went to the theaters to see stuff that didn't really have like a narrative even. You know, it's just like, this is what we can do with technology now. And people are like, ooh, ah. And like, that's cool. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
You can go to like the 50s, and if you look at like what some of the highest grossing movies of the 50s were, like some of those years, the top 10 will have like just like footage of Niagara Falls that was shot in CinemaScope. Like, and it was like people went out to the theaters to see that. Like, or think about like, again, like the Walt Disney Company, we forget how many years they basically made their bread and butter just doing nature documentaries.
Yeah.
Like, throwing lemmings off of cliffs and shit. Like, committing
and I just want to
crimes.
finish.
What?
I want to finish mentioning that that the initial Technicolor was that red and teal 2-strip Technicolor look that I really love. You could see it replicated in Martin Scorsese's The Aviator to great effect, I think. Yeah. And then there's weird instances. We don't have to get into all of it because it's not really relevant to the Mank discussion, but like tinting color prints through like stencil applied tints and stuff like that, like the original Cyrano de Bergerac and Georges Méliès, who Trip to the Moon and stuff like that, who famously apparently employed a lot of women to color his films. And it's like, wow, truly throughout the history of film, there were like a bunch of people who just went unremarked upon,
I mean, that's
who were like essential to the viability of the industry.
They were all the
just
tech.
Like, hey, we just never hear about
all
them.
the tech people for a while was where the women got like shuffled off too, And what's weird is they let women be directors before the director became like this really important position, Like back in the day, it used to be like the director just kind of like babysits the movie. Like that was the idea, right? Like now we understand, like no, director's like actually an important position. But before we understood that, we let women do it all the time.
Now, as someone who has not seen the film, has only seen the opening and kind of got a vibe of it, and I'm going to watch the whole film eventually, I want to ask you, Matt Garingo, is this exact discussion why people are rallying around Babylon?
Babylon probably, well, I don't know. I've been hearing takes on Babylon all week, and I just want to like break legs. Like,
well, I'm just saying like the idea of like remarking upon the formerly like unremarked artists that kind of get lost in the shuffle.
Babylon has this really great on paper idea about the history of Hollywood, which is that it was started by a bunch of carnival freaks, like that it was barkers and just outsiders coming in, and the push and pull between the technical aspects of film and the weird like carny showmanship aspects of it, and kind of the money men that rule it all. We see the industry starts off it's a lot more chaotic. There's no sound. It's just like people are running around, people are getting killed making movies. Everything's a lot more debaucherous, and there's a more diversity. There's women making movies, there's gays on film sets, there's people of color. It's a lot more diverse.
Oh, I gotta say, my boy F.W. Murnau, R.I.P. The guy who directed Nosferatu and got ran out of Germany. He's the man who invented the look of the modern vampire. He was openly gay, and he did not have a problem with, at least not like a fucking horrendous one. I'm sure there were fucking problems.
In history, just to say, in history, the horror genre seems to be dominated by gays in the background. It's just like that shit is so fucking gay. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's this thing of like, yes, that's how it starts, and then sound comes in. This is just what Babylon is. I'm sorry, but like sound comes in. Everything now, okay, everything has to be locked down, controlled. You go from, tents essentially out in the middle of fields to now you're on these locked down sets. It becomes this very technical process. The industry, as a response, becomes more conservative, and then like the movie kind of gets to a place where it's like, this is the push and pull of Hollywood history, right? Like that, right. It's this ebb and flow of debauchery to kind of a reactionary conservatism, and the movie kind of ends with this argument that like, we are in, like, Avatar, everyone talks about, like, it does the montage of movies at the end, the movie...
Yeah, I heard about that.
The movie ends with David Elrich's top 10 movies of the year, or whatever the fuck, like...
That's very funny.
That's the vibe it has, like, and it's like, editing is my passion, like, that's how that movie ends, and everyone was like, why'd they put Avatar in there? And, like, not, as someone who is not the biggest Avatar fan, it makes perfect sense. It's like, we are 100%, like, Avatar is the beginning of, we're back to the soundstage world, right? Like, we've totally gone back to that. And hopefully in the future, we will see that other crest, like, it'll go back the other way where it turns more DIY and on the street and more do-it-yourself type stuff and outsidery. All that's like, that sounds like a great movie, right? Like, doesn't that sound like it's going to be the best movie ever?
Yeah, I mean, hey, I could still love it.
You probably will because you're Diego. But the movie's 3 fucking hours long, and it's boring as shit and was directed by a virgin. So that's what really it's the approach to sex in that movie is kind of what threw me off. Like, it really, like, that's where I'm like, this person doesn't know what they are saying. Like, and I'm not going to act like I'm fucking, like fucking Nicholson in the 70s or something, but, like, it has all the vibe of some, like, like when you were younger and, like, your friend would be like, did you see this fucked up shit online? And they would, like, show it to you, like.
Yeah.
But that's what that movie feels like. And, like, you look it up and it's like, it's shocking. And then it's, like, not shocking very quickly, right? Like, it's just like, okay, I guess this is what the world is out there. Like, it's shocking the first few times. Like, nowadays people will be like, you're not going to believe what this person, this fucked up thing people are into. And I'm like, that's not that shocking. Like, there are people who want to have sex with airplanes.
What? You know what? I shouldn't be...
Again, yeah, like, see, that's the reaction. You're like, what? And then you're like, you know what? That's not that weird. Like...
I mean, it is, but, like, it's 2023. There's going to be some shit out there.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, the reason why Scorsese could do a movie with cocaine energy is because Scorsese did enough cocaine to kill a micronation. Like, he knows what it's like. I don't think Damien Chazelle has, like, he doesn't have that lived experience. And when he tries to do it, it's so weird where it's like there is so much debauchery on the screen in Babylon, and you feel none of it, like it was oddly embarrassing for the guy. Like,
I was just asking if it was why people liked the movie, but I'm glad I got a rant out of it.
Because people were already reclaiming it. Like, I knew it was going to happen, and it's like that and Blonde. I'm telling you, like 10 years from now, people are going to be like, those were misunderstood, brilliant pieces of filmmaking. And I am having none of it.
And I have seen neither, although I did like literally all of other Andrew Dominic.
I know Andrew Dominic was like a bummer. Like, see, it's,
Yeah, I mean, then you just hear about him and you're like, oh
yeah.
shit.
Well, the interviews didn't help much.
The interviews are the worst interviews maybe any director has ever given, outside of the interview Joss Whedon did last year.
Oh yeah,
That made him sound like a psychopath.
Yeah.
Because
but
but okay.
well,
so
Babylon's
this is
important because it
another
is
point.
also about the history of Hollywood. You know.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm just baffled by Babylon still. You know, like.
Well, here's another take. Again, having not seen the film, not judging the quality of the film because I have no qualifications
Diego's going
to
to get the best
qualify
picture in about a month. I'm predicting that.
Nope and Fablemans are kind of unbeatable for me.
But here's what's gonna happen. People are gonna be like, everyone was sucking the dick of the Fablemans in 2022 when it should have gone to Babylon. That'll be the narrative.
I like Damien Chazelle's other movies. He's not Spielberg. I've never been. But anyway, the point I want to make now, as we pivot back to Mank, is that Mank comes from a very controversial origin, from a controversial film critic, Pauline Kael.
Well, do we want to say what Mank is about before we get into who wrote?
All right. Yeah, maybe I tried to segue too early. Mank is about Herman J. Mankiewicz, the co-writer of Citizen Kane, and some would argue the only writer of Citizen Kane. I want to say that is a baseless accusation that has been discredited and disproven decades ago, and people continue to both tout it and discredit it. So I want to put that out there. It's directed by David Fincher, stars Gary Oldman as Mank.
Gary Oldman, who was older than Mank at the time of the film's making than Mank was when he died.
I want to say you can tell, and I remember in the lead up to the film, I was like really excited for another David Fincher movie, and David Fincher was like, "Yeah, I got some shit for that, for casting him. He just looks so much older, not trying to like de-age him or anything. But you look at him, and he just looked like that when he was younger because he drank so much." And I was like, "Yeah, he looked older because he's all fucked up and like an alcoholic, like he suffered from like a horrible bout of alcoholism until he died, basically."
And alcohol, I almost said balcohol. Alcohol back then was basically just poison. Like it wasn't like today. Like it was like basically just poison, and people would be like, "Yep, I got a bottle." Like, I mean, Prohibition didn't come out of fucking nowhere. I'm just gonna say that. Like, yes, it was a mistake, but like. We were just poisoning people.
And yeah, he did look rough, But
I think we made that joke about, we talked about this on another episode recently where people were like, "Oh, what are they, 64?" And you're like, "They're 27 years old." Like,
yeah.
And it's like, oh, because they've been working in a coal mine. Like,
yeah.
People
looked older because life conditions were worse. Also, if you're curious why Americans look so much worse, is because the FDA doesn't actually regulate truly dangerous shit that can go into our food, and maybe cut back on bread, for the foreseeable future. Don't have to stop eating it, but maybe go to places that bake their own bread or make your own.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful with what you put in your body. So I'm just gonna shotgun this Coca-Cola I have next to me. But...
Yeah. So Mank, an original Netflix film, clearly one of their big pushes for Best Picture nominations.
Yeah. Which I guess will just never happen. But after...
No, wait. I have to say, the new All Quiet on the Western Front is like kind of sweeping European nominations and is up for Best Picture and Best Cinematography.
If that wins, though, people will riot. Like that...
I will riot.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to war with Germany if it wins.
All right, that's a great lesson to take away.
Yeah.
From All Quiet on the Western Front.
If you haven't seen the fucking movie.
I saw about half of it, and I was like, I think I get what they're trying here, and then I stopped. Like,
Michael Bay had more restraint and ambulance than that movie does.
Yeah, it's trying.
That's
it's one of those that thinks like the best way to depict the horrors of war is to just show the horrors of war as much as possible.
Yeah, look, and to be fair, it's very technically adept. Everyone is very talented.
Everyone
They're
tried
using their talent
really
wrong.
hard on that.
They're
movie.
using their talent incorrectly on the wrong material. That's all that happened.
Yeah. But I gotta say that this is Fincher's follow-up to Gone Girl, which was a movie that made $370 million on a $60 million budget, an R-rated thriller. And he doesn't make a movie for a good chunk of change. Like it was like at least 6 years, right? Like, yeah.
2020, yeah.
And after his, in a row, he does The Social Network. He does The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which kind of underperformed for what they wanted it to do, but that was just the studio, like, way overestimating what The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo would do.
Yeah.
And then Gone Girl. It's like this weird run. He's doing great, and then he disappears in the Netflix land. And there's like this weird 6 years where he is starting projects, and none of them are getting made, and he's like burning bridges everywhere. Like,
yeah, we've talked about it before, but like, I think people forgot he almost did World War Z 2. Like,
yeah, he was like,
it wasn't a hypothetical. Like, it was close to happening.
Mm-hmm. It was gonna.
That's strange.
It was really close. They were like, they were about to start shooting. Like, the other was he almost did. He was really close to doing 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea for Disney. You remember this?
That's right. Yeah,
that was one of those where like Disney was like trying things. There was also the like, will he do a sequel to Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which just never happened, and it turned into that weird Girl in the Spider's Web, which no one remembers.
Oh.
Yeah. He almost did the Angelina Jolie Cleopatra movie that never happened. Do you remember?
I did not know that one.
You remember this?
Whoa. No.
And here's something he also almost did Steve Jobs was the other one. Because it was kind of going to be like him and teaming together
Sorkin.
again. Yeah, Sorkin after The Social Network. Like, it was like a match. They're like, this is perfect for him. And if I remember correctly, this was in, like, Steve Jobs was a big part of those, the Sony hacks, remember? When all those leaked?
Fuck, that's right. Oh my God.
And who's the woman that was involved in that?
Amy Pascal was the head of Sony at that time.
Amy Pascal, the head of Sony. And some news story broke that was like, Fincher isn't going to do Steve Jobs. He signed on to do a different movie. And she, like, emails it to him, and the headline is like that, and then the other story is Adam Driver being looked at for Star Wars sequel. Like, this is when that news story broke, right? Mm-hmm. And she emails him the headlines and is like, what the fuck is this? Like, she was pissed. And Fincher's response was, I don't know, Adam Driver seems like a weird choice. And I'm like, you're doing this to the head of Sony Pictures? Like,
I don't remember that one. Whoa. That's
I remember
crazy.
that. I remember that. Yeah. Well, there's like, there was him, he was talking shit about people for a while. Like, and he kept signing up with studios and being like, I'm going to make a movie with them. And then they just didn't happen. And he ends up at Netflix, where he does Mank, and he did The Killer, which should be out later this year, right? That's Netflix, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
The other thing he does is Mindhunter, which is like this big kind of crossover hit of a show that then, like, they're just like, it got too expensive, we're not doing season 3. And you're like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what happened? And then he did that Noir. Remember Noir? Or whatever.
Noir.
No, Voyeur.
Voir?
Was that what it was?
Voir? Because it's noir with a V instead, so like voir?
Yeah. Which sounds a little too close to vor. So
I know.
I guess
I don't
David
bring
Fincher
it up.
doesn't know what that is. But
there's like 100% chance he does.
I don't know, man. David Fincher's weird. And
David Fincher is strange.
And that thing dropped, like, it just dropped. It was 6 episodes. No one even cared. Like, there wasn't even a, like, kind of interesting. Or, like, there weren't even people.
There
was, like, one
characters
thing
attached
about it where, like, someone involved sucked, right? Like,
yeah, at least one person involved sucks.
yeah.
And
And
then there's
I'm not gonna comment on that fully, but
there's other people who are just annoying. But there was also like the guy who invented the YouTube video essay.
the guy who should be tried in The Hague for
Wait, whoa, what did he do?
The blight he has placed upon this nation.
But I think he recognized what was happening, and that's why he stopped making videos.
Yes, but he is still culpable in those crimes.
Sure, but when you create, you also destroy. Do you not?
Yeah. Is that fucking Werner von Braun's defense of the V2 rocket? Huh? So,
no. What's the quote? We create our own demons.
Sure, whatever.
Tony Stark.
Yeah.
2013.
Yeah, great movie.
That is a great movie.
But
I also
it was just shocking that like it did basically nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And Fincher went. It felt very quickly. Fincher was like a god to film Twitter for a while, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then it was like it felt like a month before Mank dropped, everyone turned on him, and then people were like, we're not that hype for Mank. And I don't know if it retroactive. I don't know if people went back and were like, fuck all the shit he did, but like Mank was definitely not warmly received, despite being his first movie in 6 years.
Mank wasn't warmly received. I also think the way we talk about how we make movies now, like with the advent of social media and how stuff has evolved, you and I were talking before the show about how like we have these better understandings of how culture is shifting, who is responsible for like kind of sustaining that culture, how many people kind of get tossed by the wayside because of it. And I think because we know more than ever, like more people know more than ever how movies are made, what goes into it, the crews, the hard work and labor that goes into it, and unfortunately how some people maybe take advantage of people's time and abilities to work in these environments, that I think most people frown upon Fincher's like 1,000 takes.
Well, probably, because I also remember at the time that discourse bubbled up again of like Christopher Nolan doesn't have chairs on his set or something like that. Remember that? Was that Nolan?
Yeah. I don't even know if that's true.
I think that ended up not like he was someone was making a joke, I think, and it got blown out of proportion. But yeah, but I will say what's weird about Fincher is he has that like he does 1,000 takes type things, but most people, like the people that work with him, seem to like working with him. You know?
Yeah.
Like it's not like he's like he does 1,000 takes to break people in like a Kubrick-esque fashion, you know. It's like I like the people who like Mindhunter allegedly had a very similar production for like a TV show, like they did a lot of that, which is partly why the budget was so huge. And all the people who worked on Mindhunter were like, we love doing it, like, which is interesting. The only person I know who like really didn't like it was I know Downey Jr. wasn't happy on Zodiac.
I also think Jesse Eisenberg on Social Network mentioned like that it was a lot. Maybe I'm misremembering, but
there's a difference between them going like it was a lot and like I believe Downey Jr. like started like pissing in bottles on the set as like a form of protest against like
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, wasn't happy.
Pre-Iron Man.
And David Fincher, of course, because he's a maniac, was like, I will use the friction of this to further the scene or whatever the fuck. When is Zodiac because it's digital. Once he starts being able to shoot on digital, he's like, I can do as many fucking takes as I want. Like, that's when Fincher really loses it.
I think it's Zodiac, because what's before Zodiac? Like Panic Room?
Which again, there's another gap between Panic Room and Zodiac.
Yeah, that's a little wild.
And Panic Room is like his bounce back success after Fight Club bombed. What people don't remember, Fight Club did not do well initially.
Yeah, Fight Club bombed. Oh, when is The Game?
The Game's right before that.
Damn. He was just like knocking him out right after 7.
Well, it's weird. This Alien 3, which is like a disaster of a production, right?
Yeah,
which
his best movie, but yes.
Most directors would not recover from that. And then it's just like, he does 7, and 7 also feels like a movie where people would have just violently rejected it before we got to know who Fincher was, you know? And instead, people were like, "No, we liked it." Like everyone kind of liked 7, like, and you're like, "Really?" And it's still one of those movies that people talk about. And then then the game, then Fight Club, which is like this oddly cultural defining film with a troubling arc. That's not. I don't know if that's necessarily the movie's fault, but
it's one of those movies where I'm like, I find that movie fascinating. I don't even say I love it. Don't really talk about it with people though. Just I feel like there's an air about the people that talk about that movie regularly, and
there was
I
also
don't want to be associated with
I don't know
that.
if you remember, there was also like a worry that Gone Girl would have a similar effect on people. Do you remember this?
I missed that completely.
Well, because Gone Girl, a big part of it. Spoilers for Gone Girl. I'm about to spoil Gone Girl big time, but you should see it. But like,
you should. It's a great movie.
Yeah, Amazing Amy, Rosamund Pike, in that movie is like a fucking monster who like has been like framing people for crimes like her whole life, right? And there's even a sequence where like her like college boyfriend is like, she framed me for rape, right? Like, which is like, this is like right before Me Too really takes off too. And people were like, are people going to use this movie as an argument to like defend monsters? Like, I remember that being, and to me, Gone Girl is like borderline satirical about like the insane lengths someone would have to go to, like a woman would have to go to frame crimes like this, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just remember that. I think Gone Girl, in a way that like we weren't paying attention, I think what Gone Girl really leads to is the boom of true crime obsessives. I think inadvertently Gone Girl is a part of that.
I would agree with that.
Like this is not my take. This is Jay Bauman of Red Letter Media's, that true crime is Fight Club for wine moms. And I'm like, I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And I think that's also the target audience of Gone Girl in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And, Gone Girl, like, just since this is related to Fincher Talk, too, like, Gone Girl is such a defining film. It just didn't, like, it was a hit. It was a hit, for sure.
It was a hit.
Like,
I saw that thing in a fucking packed theater, man, which I was not expecting.
Me too!
And the audience also, I don't know why they were there, because they clearly were not ready for how hardcore that movie goes.
Yeah.
A girl behind me burst into tears when Neil Patrick Harris got murdered.
Well,
Right?
here's two things. That's coming after, like, or during How I Met Your Mother, I think. Right after or during How I Met Your Mother?
It's either winding down or it's, like, just ended. Like,
yeah. And so, credit to him for taking a very different performance, or very different role. But then Gone Girl is also, like, there's a subgenre of thriller movies now that are just trying to be Gone Girl.
Yeah, and then none of them have been good.
I like Woman in the Window.
Yeah, I know
That's
you do.
the one.
But,
it's Gone Girl meets Rear Window. Kind of rules. It's a mess. Tony Gilroy did the reshoot, so I kind of like it. And I like Joe Wright. So, fuck it. But yeah, and like none of them are very good, but people still like go to see them.
Gillian Flynn has not written a book since Gone Girl in 2012.
Huh.
She did co-write Widows, the movie.
Oh yeah, I like that movie.
And a show called Utopia for Amazon, which I've never seen.
I don't know that one either.
It's got John Cusack. It was canceled after 8 episodes.
Okay.
So
well, that's I wonder why that is.
So
maybe she's just very.
Did
comfortable.
no one benefit from Gone Girl? Like,
I know. Yeah, I mean, I remember after like that movie came out, Rosamund Pike. I was like, well, clearly she's
everyone was like Rosamund
like
Pike.
Lead.
Like, it's like fucking she's the next big thing, and I can't think of anything that really happened. She been in anything of note?
She's in stuff. She's in another Gone Girl ripoff, and it's not as good.
Oh, I Care a Lot. I saw that. That movie's terrible.
Yeah.
That movie was bad.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess she's on the Wheel of Time show. Which,
I'm sorry.
What a mistake.
Here, cast, not great. Gillian Flynn, Not a jump start. Reese Witherspoon produced Gone Girl.
Yeah, she's pretty. A lot of those like true crime movies are Reese Witherspoon produced things.
Jesus Christ!
She just produced that one that was like controversial this year. The what the fuck was it called? Crawdads. Am I getting this wrong?
Crawdaddy.
Where the Crawdads sing. No, where the...
Oh wait, no, Crawdaddy. Why did I think? Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of Us. I'm thinking of when the dad gets the boat in Us. I don't know why I thought Crawdaddy.
I was gonna say something. It's where the Crawdads sing, but I had something that was like Crawdads down in a well. Like that was where my brain was going, and I'm like, that's not the title. So at least I googled it, but. That's the one where, like, the author of it might have been part of a real-life murder.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Well, you can't really predict that.
It happened, like, 10 years before the movie.
Never mind.
That's a complicated one. She's, Reese Witherspoon's, like, producer on a lot of interesting films like that.
Okay, so...
Reese Witherspoon's supposed to be a real fun person.
Well, here, let's cinematography done by Jeff Cronenweth, son of the great Jordan Cronenweth, who shot Blade Runner, shot a bit of Alien 3 before his passing. Jeff Cronenweth worked with David Fincher for basically his whole career.
Until Mank.
No, until Gone Girl.
That's what I mean. He doesn't work with them on Mank. Like...
No, but here's the thing. He's not even doing, like, interesting projects after that. He does A Million Little Pieces with Sam Taylor Johnson. Based on the also discredited work.
Yeah.
And Being the Ricardos, also discredited by everyone who saw the trailer and was like, no thank you.
Yeah. I mean, Being the Ricardos looked fine.
Did it?
I only saw trailers.
Okay.
When you get past the makeup, I was like, all right, sure.
Just Javier Bardem is just fucking...
That's a choice. I mean... That was a choice. Someone...
Lucy, you got some splendid.
Yeah, like...
This is the best.
Who the fuck let that happen?
Aaron Sorkin, he fucking vouched for it, and that's why he's a bad person. No, I don't know. He's a bad filmmaker. I don't know what kind of person
he's got bad instincts.
He's got terrible instincts.
Yeah. But, like, also, Gone Girl's, like, one of those, like, Ben Affleck is back, baby. Like... That's where
and then he does Batman.
And then it's like Batman and then alcoholism and then divorce. And like it's like immediately everything fell apart. Like
yeah, but now he's back with J-Lo. Benifer's back,
yeah,
baby.
that's weird. I don't know if that's a recovery though. Like time will tell. Time will tell. Could be the greatest thing that happened to him, could be the worst.
I'm guessing it looks like he's having a good time.
He seems happy. He was in that fucking Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
I didn't see that actually.
It's him, like people. He's the guy in the booth, whatever, when you place your order, and people are like, "Oh my god, it's Ben Affleck." It's one of those. He's doing what Letterman did fucking 30 years ago.
But hey, you know what? He's in on the joke, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love it when celebrities can laugh at themselves.
Yeah. Ben Affleck is fucking great in Gone Girl, the movie we're not here to talk about. So we have to pivot back to Mank now.
Tyler Perry's in Gone Girl.
Tyler Perry is also really
probably
good in
the
Gone
only
Girl.
one who actually maybe did kind of benefit from Gone Girl. Because it is a movie where...
He did.
Yeah, I watched it, I'm like, Tyler Perry's actually not that bad an actor. Like, he's perfect for that role.
Tyler Perry should have been Mank.
Oh my god, you're right.
I'm not even joking here. Because this is my take on Mank. I don't really like this movie. I think I can appreciate some things I don't think I'm meant to appreciate it for, if that makes any sense. Because Fincher is a fucking Pauline Kael truther.
Now would be the time to explain the Pauline Kael thing.
Okay, Pauline Kael, notorious film critic, who look, I'm gonna just get down to it. I think a lot of people on Letterboxd think they're the next Pauline Kael.
Mm-hmm.
I think they strive to create discourse. I think she also is a. I think here's the thing. I think she's super talented. I think she is a genuinely talented film critic and writer who just seems to have like weird controversial takes for the sake of controversy. And I think she kind of what's the word I'm looking for here?
She sucked.
No,
I don't know.
I don't. I never met her. I don't.
She
know
wrote
her.
for the New Yorker.
She wrote for the New Yorker. Yes, she. I guess this. She's trying to be a contrarian a lot of the time. It feels like.
Well, she was also like, I think she went up against a lot of, I don't know what the popular sentiment about film at the time, especially New Hollywood. And in retrospect, some of her takes might look a little more on the money than maybe it was. Maybe because it feels more like maybe at the time she was just trying to get a rise out of people, but she ended up being right in some ways.
I think that's the thing. Like, whenever you're trying to make something just to get a rise out of people, like I think last week I went on my fucking tirade against Gaspar Noé. I think they're kind of cut from the same cloth a little bit.
Well, I mean, and not of the same ilk, but like the other big, critic, I guess, that everyone talks about is like Roger Ebert, And Ebert is someone where when he was on the money, he was fucking on the money. But like I can find so many reviews of him where he's like out to fucking sea of just like
I mean, a lot of his horror stuff is aged terribly.
Yeah, like Siskel and Ebert really didn't get horror and probably set the horror genre back by about a decade, frankly.
Yeah,
when they were the top critics in the country, and they just couldn't. They just were not there for it, and it probably deeply affected the careers of a lot of those guys. And they didn't even like Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, fuck, that's right.
Like, they were two of the people being like, we don't understand why people like this movie. Like, we don't know. It just turns into a geek show at the end, I think was their take. And
Pauline Kael, I think I have to also mention, like, you're a woman in an industry that's been dominated by men, and you got to keep punching upwards. You're getting punched down upon all the time. Like, it's a difficult position to be in. I'm sure it was really hard to even stick around in that industry for as long as she was alive. Credit where credit's due. Like, support women's wrongs as much as you support women's rights. I guess. She was an ardent opponent of the auteur theory.
Yes.
So now we have to talk about that a little bit. Do you know the definition of auteur theory? All right. Well, here I'm gonna make a release.
I know what it is.
Yeah. I think
the director is the author of the film in the broadest terms, right? Like.
Yeah. That's why it's like John Carpenter's whatever.
Yeah.
Even though John Carpenter
it
always goes out of his way to credit his I will call them co-authors in every department of the film he makes. He will always, like, in the commentaries, you can hear him like, "Oh, that
Carpenter's
was
so weird." Where
whatever.
like he even uses pseudonyms in his credits because he doesn't like his name being in the credits that much. But then also he calls the movie like John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. Like,
yeah. Well, he was smart because he was like, "Yeah, I did it for like a branding thing," and I was like, "Yep, there you go." He made his name.
It works.
And
we call it John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah. But yeah, auteur theory, I think we all kind of understand it without like knowing it, which is that like, it's the concept that the director is the primary force behind the creation of the film. And I think auteurs, I think certain video game creators kind of liken themselves to like auteurs. Yeah. I'm not going to name any names, but there's a show of a video game adaptation from a guy who maybe kind of considers himself an auteur. Even though I would disagree, but
imagine making that game and being like, I'm an auteur.
I know. Director is the one the film revolves around.
I'd give whoever was behind fucking Crash Bandicoot 2 more credit. Like,
I also would too, but I also have mixed feelings about that because I also. Look, here's the thing. Film is not a democracy. When you're making a movie, it's not a democracy, right? So, like, I couldn't tell you whether I'm pro or anti-auteur theory. I just think, like, it's a complicated issue. Especially depending on the film, because then you got to think about, like, journeyman directors and stuff like that. Like, they're not auteurs, but like they're no less worthy of the title of director if you get a movie made.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? You can make a bad movie and you're a director. Like, it's fine. You know?
Mhm.
Ed Wood's a director. Like,
Well, it's like that's vulgar auteurism, you know, where it's like directors who aren't necessarily geniuses, but they have a body of work, and there's connecting tissue between all of them, you know.
yeah.
I mean, Ed Wood certainly had that, like, and it's present in a lot of filmmakers. Whether you want to ascribe it totally to the director or the team they assemble or whatever.
Yeah, and then hey, there are some directors who like they're really good at assembling the team to make like the stuff happen for them. That's part of being a director. Some people rely on that more than others, but like that's no less directing.
I think this concept of auteur is going to come up in a later episode of this series, but not.
I would agree.
Not with a filmmaker. But hey, that's a whole other discussion. It's one of those things where like auteur theory needed to happen because we had to start taking movies a little more seriously and the role of the director a little more seriously. You know, it's a total reaction to Golden Age Hollywood where things were so like compartmentalized assembly line movies. In fact, it's one of these things where like I don't necessarily agree with auteur theory and like any big way, but I kind of want to give it more credit than maybe it deserves because we've re-entered an era where we don't want to treat directors as artists anymore, you know? Like it's back to the studio and the product they put out, and that's concerning. You know?
It is, and also I think we're now in the era where we're watching maybe some producers trying to be recognized as auteurs.
And I don't even know if that's necessarily wrong for a producer to be the auteur in some ways. You know, like I don't know if it's that cut and dry. You know, like I mean, like you could call someone like David O. Selznick an auteur in a way. You know, he didn't direct those.
Howard
movies.
Hawks,
yeah.
Who was a director, but I think we all know what I'm referring to here regarding his secret directing projects.
Yeah, allegedly.
When he was credited as a producer. Allegedly.
Or think of like all the movies Spielberg produced in the 80s, which have like that Amblin vibe, you know? Like and of course there are other we got like Toby Hooper and Joe Dante behind the scenes. They all bring their own shtick to it, but there is a distinct Spielbergness to all of it, and that influences so much of the arc of film. And it's interesting. It's hard to, you know, it is something where I also think sometimes it's a thing of like, well, do we want to elevate the director above everyone else? And I'm like, one of these is like an artistic debate. The other is a labor debate, which I think are two separate debates ultimately, you know, like we need to separate the like, who deserves credit as the genius debate from the workers who like have to actually make the thing debate, right? Like it shouldn't matter who's a genius in terms of compensating your workers, right? And it's a labor issue more than a artistic issue.
Which is, you know, again, to Pauline Kael's credit, I think kind of her stance on it, because she was, you know, like I mentioned, an ardent like opponent of it. But regarding Citizen Kane especially, she's like, oh, well, you know, Herman J. Mankiewicz was like the real writer. He was the co-writer. And, you know, you don't get the look of that film without cinematographer Greg Toland. And now this lets me talk about the interesting stuff about Mank, which is the look of the film versus the look of Citizen Kane.
We can't get there yet.
Damn it.
Because we can't downplay how bad Pauline Kael's piece was.
Okay, all right.
Raising Cain, which is the piece she wrote, which basically tried to argue that Orson Welles didn't write a single word of Citizen Kane, right?
Yes.
Like, that's what she argued, and that he gets way too much credit, and that we should give Mank more credit. And then she's also like, Orson was an egomaniac, tried to wrestle control, an egomaniac who also shared his directing title with Greg Toland in the movie, by the way. If you watch Citizen Kane, the credits, Orson Welles, director, and cinematographer Greg Toland are listed together. So I don't know why an egomaniac would let something like that happen, but hey. Not gonna say
and maybe
not gonna say Orson didn't have an ego, obviously, but
yeah. I think there's a difference between having an ego and being an egomaniac.
yeah.
Also worth noting, the script creditation in the film is with Herman J. Mankiewicz.
It
The
is
same,
true
maybe.
that Orson did initially object to sharing credit because it was a work for hire. That was part of the contract they set up. Mankiewicz, I believe, wrote 2 drafts and then wanted more credit. But he essentially wrote like an insanely long and unwieldy script that then Orson had to trim down. And I believe there were like 3 subsequent drafts. Is that correct?
I think 3, but also worth noting that they wrote the same script like separately.
Yeah.
Or they worked on the same. They worked on Citizen Kane separately, and then Orson's the one who put them all together. And like you mentioned, the unwieldy part from Mankiewicz's drafts. Wells did his own stuff, and he was like, "Oh well, this works better. This works this way. This works that way." I would not like to say I'm like a fucking angel looking over the situation. I'd be like, "Hey Orson, like I wouldn't take full credit for this," but
I would agree. Yeah. No, at the end of the day, the right thing happened, which they were both credited.
yeah,
Like that's 100% what should have happened. And shit like that happens all the time in Hollywood, unfortunately, where it's like people's names aren't on scripts that they were a big part of. Like what's his name? Who's the fucking guy credited for the first Spider-Man movie? Who's like they barely used his script.
David Koepp.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
It happened. I mean, Star Wars is credited to fucking George Lucas. I mean, he had like 4 other people help him with that.
Yeah. And also worth noting that maybe this is one of the things that maybe people appreciate about Pauline Kael now more than before. Also, is like, there's all these writing disputes in Hollywood. And it's like writers have never been paid less for their time. Like
Yeah.
Approximating it throughout the history of the film industry. Writers have never been paid less, received less residuals, with maybe an era exception or 2, right? Like, it's really bad right now. That's probably why there's going to be like a strike in the Writers Guild. And
That worked out really well last time. Sorry.
So her vouching for Mankiewicz is like, I can see how someone could really rally behind that. It's like, hey, the forlorn artist behind Citizen Kane was not Wells, it was the writer.
And he dies
came up
like
with all this.
he dies kind of impoverished. He had a really rough life. Basically alienated everyone in his life. Complicated guy, and he wrote, and you gotta remember, like, the whole thing about like him, he had just been in a car accident when he dictated his version of Citizen Kane. Like, that's all true, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's difficult. And again, I don't want to downplay his contributions, but like, and we have to say, Raising Cain isn't like the charitable reading on Raising Cain is that Pauline Kael had an agenda, which was to kind of deflate the auteurism of Orson Welles in connection to Kane, right? Like, she doesn't like auteur theory. She wants to go after the pinnacle, like the movie that is put at the top as the greatest movie ever made, right? She wants to take the supposed auteur of that down a peg. She finds research written by another researcher whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, who concluded that the authorship question was up for debate. He did not fall on Mankiewicz's side over Wells. He just said it was up for debate, right? Pauline Kael builds off of this person's research, goes further, and says Mankiewicz wrote the whole thing, and Wells did very little. I don't know how she could justify making that leap. I don't know. Maybe she was caught up in the zeal of it. Maybe she felt she had enough to push it in a certain way. She massaged facts. Then doesn't credit the person whose research she's taking from, which is what she's accusing Wells of doing, by the way. And then just she was so focused on achieving her to making her point that she kind of had tunnel vision and didn't see the mistake she was making along, and didn't do basic follow-up research with other people involved in the production, correct?
Yeah.
That's the charitable reading of Raising Cain. The very uncharitable reason is that it's a hit piece, basically. And it was written recklessly and did damage to a guy who already wasn't doing well, frankly.
Yeah, that's the point I have, is that, like, he was no longer on top of the world,
Yeah.
Orson Welles.
Well,
this is
we have to
like Orson
remember,
Welles.
Like, it's so ridiculous to think now, but the narrative with Orson Welles, even long after his death, was he makes Citizen Kane and then never made a movie that even came close to it, right?
Yes.
Like, that he starts that great, never comes close. What the hell happened? That was what people believed for the longest time. There's a great documentary called The Battle for Citizen Kane. Have you ever seen this?
I have not. I should have watched it before this.
Yeah, I believe it won an Academy Award. It was released. It's on most DVD versions of Citizen Kane. It came with my copy, and it's a really good documentary. Kind of goes over it, but it does kind of end on the note of Orson never achieved the success of Citizen Kane after it was all over, and that like he was kind of considered a joke towards the end of his life, and you know it's a bummer,
Mm-hmm.
and and it's a thing where now when you look back, it's like Orson has at least, I would argue, at least 3 movies that are it could go toe to toe with Citizen Kane in terms of his best movie, you know?
Yeah.
And that just wasn't, and so like to attack him, to go after him with this piece at a time when like he's about to embark on the other side of the wind debacle, you know, which is his real like last hurrah. He never finishes The Dreamers. He never finishes Don Quixote. Like he does F for Fake, which F for Fake is one where it's like, you want to talk about the guy responsible for fucking video essays. It's like Orson Welles' F for Fake. Like, he did the first one, and it was fucking 1973.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could make an argument that that's his greatest movie. And to put a piece like this out is offensive, frankly. And yeah, I don't think there's not a lot of and that was my problem is that was my introduction to Pauline Kael, was the whole Raising Cain controversy, and it has really tainted my view of her other work, because that is such a bad, like it's not just I don't think it's just a lapse in judgment. Like it feels worse than that, you know. And
yeah,
that's it's a real, it kind of bums me out to think about, you know, because she clearly is a very influential writer and has written a lot of great stuff, and I can't not think of Raising Cain when I read it, you know. So like, even when someone like that makes a great point, it's like talking to a known liar, you know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, you've had falling outs with people where like you get over it, you kind of meet up again, you talk, and you're just like, all is forgiven, but we're never going to go back to being friends because I know you now, right? Like, it happens.
Yeah.
And
you learn a little too much about the real person.
And it's like, it's like, yes, you can do positive things, and I wish the best for you, but whatever you do from now on, I'm going to think about those other things. And it happens. I mean, you know, and I'm sure that can happen with other critics. I mean, I think that's why some people, like, fucking certain pockets of the internet will hate Ebert forever, because the introduction to him was him saying video games could never be art, you know?
Yeah.
Which, bad introduction. But not as reductive, in my opinion, as Raising Cain. But that's a discussion.
Yeah. Also worth noting that basically Hollywood rejected Raising Cain for the most part.
Well,
I mean, not everyone, but there were like immediate rebuttals.
There were
from
rebuttals
it.
immediately. Peter Bogdanovich probably being like the biggest, because he was like Wells' sycophant at the time, you know. Like,
yeah, and he has a point by point like rebuttal with his own piece called "The Kane Mutiny."
and it's devastating, but Pauline Kael didn't really face consequences as a result.
No, she did not.
And the Citizen Kane book is still published with her essay in it. I mean,
that's actually shocking.
I think the Citizen Kane book hasn't been republished in a while, but it was continued to be published with it. Like in the totality, like I believe like Pauline Kael's collected works do not include Raising Cain now, right? Like now it's been like, okay, we're not even going to pretend anymore. But she faced no consequences, and it's like that thing of like a lie has already made it around the world 3 times by the time the truth is putting on its shoes, you know? Like, for a lot of people, that Raising Cain is what they remember, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's taken basically Pauline Kael to be forgotten by the general public for, I think, the real stink of it to wash off, you know?
Yeah.
Now only film people really know about it. And that's why it was a little weird when Mank was coming out and David Fincher was like, I'm going to drag all this back up. And it was like a thing of like, David Fincher was the type of guy who, it was like, is he going to bring this whole debate back? You know? Like, there was that vibe, which I think was like the big turning point for people when it came to Mank. Like, it was, you know, I mean, people are wary of Fincher and his culture, mainly because of Fight Club, you know? Like, there's just a worry he's going to drop another Fight Club. And I think people were a little worried. And then Mank kind of landed with a bit of a wet fart, and no one really cared.
I don't know about wet fart, but it was just kind of like, oh yeah, that came out.
Yeah, no, but like I was saying, no one, like, it didn't even like create that many waves. I watched it the day it came out, mainly because I think I couldn't sleep that night. It was during the pandemic.
Yes.
And I woke up early.
That's right.
I woke up early and I just watched it at like 6 a.m. And I was at a point where I was kind of like, I don't even know if I'm going to watch this shit. And because it wasn't getting, like, people weren't talking about it. Like, people were not very excited about it. I sit down and I watch it and I was like, that wasn't that bad. Like, that was solid, you know? Like, for what it was. I kind of walked away from it that way. And then compared to what other people were saying at the time, felt like a bit of a rave review. Like, now I think people have kind of gotten a little more positive on it, and I think I've gotten the rewatch of it. I kind of was a little more negative on this rewatch. Not like fuck this movie, but just like I'm kind of like, I don't. It's whatever. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's also worth noting, like, while the worst case scenario you just mentioned didn't really stir up again, David Fincher, like, I called him a Pauline Kael truther. Like, he did go on and say, like, well, you know, you just compare Citizen Kane to his other works, like, they just don't compare. And it's like, well, I don't think people believe that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, he's very set in his ways, you know. I don't know about, like, personally, but, like, in terms of, like, his approach to film and filmmaking and such like that. And
he was really trashing Orson.
Yeah, he was.
And Orson has become the odd patron saint of film Twitter. Like,
yeah.
I mean, there was that account. I can't remember who did it, but whoever was doing the, like, what if Orson still had a talk show today account, and would just be like, this Mr. Beast fellow, he goes on and disturbs me. Like, he like the way that guy wrote it was genius. Like, I can't even imitate it. But
no, I mean, yeah, I remember that account too. I should have followed it. I don't remember it now. But like a lot of people, when they try to pretend to be Orson, they add a lot of like lengthy words and like really splendid adjectives and vernacular. And he was like, oh, he was straight to the point. He just fucking was like, it's like
the voice,
heat-seeking missile.
Yeah, the voice though is like, that is the big word, you know. Like,
yeah.
have you seen the trailer for Citizen Kane?
I haven't.
Oh,
I don't think.
oh my god, it is so worth seeking out. It is one of the best movie trailers of all time. Like, which makes sense for that movie. But it's really like, it's like a microphone, and then like it just swings over. You don't see his face, and it's like, ladies and gentlemen, this is Orson Welles speaking to you from the Mercury Theater. I want to talk to you about this coming attraction. Well, it certainly is coming. It is called Citizen Kane. Like, and just him like talking about the actors. And it'd be like, and here's some chorus girls engaging in ballet. Like, it's the fucking best. Like,
Yeah.
and it's weird that he's become like this weird kind of like people like love him now on. They love him when he's dead, like, you know, which is something he allegedly said but probably didn't. But where like now everyone on film Twitter loves Orson. I mean, how I don't even have to say anything. Like, I don't have to post much, right? But if I just say the French, everyone knows what I'm referencing. Like, it's and also you just know he would be like. Although, here's the thing, he would either be the most online motherfucker ever, right?
Oh,
like,
God, yeah. It would
or,
be incredible.
I think Abby had this take. I could be wrong if Abby said this. But someone had this take, and it was the other brilliant take, which is like, Orson wouldn't be too online. Like, he would go, like, weeks without posting. And then would post a picture of the steak dinner he was having with the comment, tonight's festivities, and then he wouldn't post again for another 6 weeks. Like, which I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. Like, I do feel it is a shame. Like, I wish Orson is one of those guys where like most guys I wish were like had died earlier. Like, Orson, I wish had hung around a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Like, where it's like the fact that he lived long enough to do the Transformers animated movie, like. That's kind of hysterical.
That's his last role, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe he has one other because like it was some bullshit no one even cares about that was released after his death. And then The Other Side of the Wind, where he has a voice cameo in it.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, he's Lew Lord in the Muppets movie. You know?
Worth noting that The Other Side of the Wind and Mank are on Netflix.
Weird, yeah.
And that is strange.
Is that
I don't
like
even think
Netflix
it's a bad
being
thing.
like,
It's
we
just
got to get
strange.
both sides of the market? Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like they're playing both sides, so they always come out on top.
yeah. And that's why Netflix is this unstoppable juggernaut that shows no signs of slowing down.
The Other Side of the Wind, is that a failed award contender?
I don't know. That's a weird one. I mean, technically, because I don't think they didn't like even bother nominating it, right?
I know. And I had this whole thing where I was like, I kind of wanted him to win a posthumous Oscar.
Yeah, it would have been kind of great. But also, there's like a lot of like because there is footage in it that was reshot, you know. And There's also the debate of like, would Orson have even released the movie in the state it was in? You know,
That's true.
Like there's the companion documentary, "They'll Love Me When I'm Dead," that Netflix also put out. Mm-hmm. And part of that was like that Orson towards the end was toying with the idea of just making a documentary about the production of The Other Side of the Wind. So The Other Side of the Wind would have been a documentary about a movie called The Other Side of the Wind, which was about the making of a movie called The Other Side of the Wind.
Jesus Christ.
So, yeah.
He's playing like 8D chess.
Yeah, a little bit. From the fucking grave. Like. And I also just think it was hysterical that, like, The Other Side of the Wind was this holy grail of, it's a basically finished Orson Welles film that's just out there somewhere. And it's got all these people in it and we'll never see it. And it finally comes out, Netflix of all people does it. It comes out, and a good 50% of that movie is Orson being like, look how hot my girlfriend is. Like, which is kind of like, God, that's king shit, honestly. Like,
yeah.
It was also shocking to watch that movie and be like, it didn't feel like Orson trying to be a part of New Hollywood, it felt like kind of relevant to today, you know?
Yeah.
It was one of those where like, man, I wish Orson could have gotten a hold of a smartphone or something like that, right?
I always think about that every once in a while with like the truly inventive filmmakers of those old, bygone eras. I'm like, what the fuck would they have done? Because there's this whole sanctity about like the preservation of film, and obviously that's important. But like, you got to do it the old-fashioned way. You got to use 3-point lighting. You got to whatever, right? And it's just like, no, you don't.
You really don't.
You can do whatever the fuck you want. And like smart filmmakers now understand that too. And you know, to David Fincher's credit, he's a big proponent of the digital cameras, like we mentioned earlier. Maybe for his own reasons, but it's like the path he set on with digital cameras does like help certain aspects of the industry and certain people who are like interested in a different look for their film. You know, his digital stuff prior to Mank, like he was like, I'm going to digital because I want like the cleanest look possible. Like The Social Network has like not a single ounce of grain or noise in it. Neither does Gone Girl, where he's like, I want to clean this shit up. Like there's a VFX breakdown going around Twitter recently about Mindhunters, and it's like he replaces the real snow because he's like, it looks boring, and then he adds digital snow falling because it looks better. It's like, all right, if you're gonna play with like the new toys, like that's probably how you should do it. Would I maybe replace real snow with digital snow? I don't know. I probably wouldn't. But the fact that you can and he knows how to, and he's like, he's got a good understanding of all that, is like worth commending.
Here's the thing, it's like I kind of have to stand with him on that because the other side of that coin is like the MCU, where it's like these actors weren't even on set on the same day, and we put them together using digital technology. Yeah, and it's like, no, like don't do that. Although Robert Rodriguez is also like directs movies similarly, but he doesn't really care about like how real anything looks, you know. Like Robert Rodriguez has that thing where he was like, this extra kind of screwed up, so I just digitally took another extra and put him over top of him. Like, yeah,
well, he also like plans his stuff like really well, meticulously, and like he has the pipeline and the know-how to make his stuff great. And you know, even the best filmmakers maybe can't survive a production-based pipeline or producer-based pipeline. You know what I mean? Like it's tough. It's tough.
But Mank was also this weird one where like when he goes in and he wants to make it look like it was made in the era it is set. And people kind of had a negative, visceral reaction to that choice. I remember like no one really being happy with that.
Yeah,
and
I don't dislike it. I think it's interesting. I don't know if it all works.
Yeah, that's it is one of those things where I just kind of like, it's one of those where like I'm glad. It's kind of like it's interesting. You can do this, right? Like you can do this, but I'm just. It's not as impressive as they think it is, I guess.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, it's also like, what are we doing here? You know? And because it no matter how good it is, it can't. It's not. I think maybe I don't know. Like, am I supposed to watch Mank? Am I supposed to go like? It feels like I found a film reel from 1942, right? Like, is that what I'm supposed to feel? Because I definitely don't feel that, you know? Just in terms of the style, it's just too modern. And then, so like when you put like these, like, I don't know if you call them like anachronisms or whatever the fuck you want to call them. Like, if that's the point, but it just throws me off, you know? And then you have the sound on top of that, which was also a choice, you know?
Yeah. That's a strange one.
And I don't know, man. I mean, you have something like this. We just did Nixon recently, you know? Which is jumping from like 5 different filmmaking styles like within the same minute, you know? Like like archival footage, fucking like, you know, black and white, fucking TV footage, fucking like, but that works in a weird, but like part of that is like the jarringness of it. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. There's something about the like going in and doing it later in post that it feels, even because Fincher should be the guy to be able to pull it off, right? Like,
Yeah.
because of his style, but like it just comes across as like inauthentic.
Yeah,
and then this
I don't
year,
know why it feels that way here.
But this year we also had something like Skinamarink just came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which a lot of like that look was done in post, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And that felt very authentic despite it clearly being done in post, you know? Like, it worked in that. So I don't fucking know. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's what...
Yeah.
I'm not smart, because again, like, Fincher's clearly, like, working on a different level that I just don't understand. But, you watch it and you're kind of like, it's interesting, but it also feels like someone like, you know, it's like when you have like YouTube channels. Remember, like, people used to do those things called like pre-makes? Do you remember those?
I don't think I know those. No.
It would be like, what if Ghostbusters was made in 1945?
Oh yeah, yeah.
They would
yeah.
edit like old movies together. It like feels more like that, honestly.
Oh my god, it totally does.
And those are fun, but I wouldn't call it high art. Like,
yeah, it's a strange situation because they reference like the making of this, like they really wanted to go for the Greg Toland like deep focus look, which you can do with digital cameras like better. I remember Peter Bogdanovich was on I think he was getting interviewed on like Marin or something like that, and he was asking like Orson about like how he got the deep focus of Citizen Kane. He's like, Orson goes like, "You'll never get it in color." Like, and he's like, no, but you know, I'm thinking if we do this with the lights, you'll never get it in color. And it's like, all right, well, I think you can now. Mm-hmm. I think people also forget like the way they made film stocks back then is so drastically different to how we make film stocks now. It's not good or bad; it's just different. And black and white. Especially, actually, no. Black and white is probably pretty similar. I would imagine. I don't know as much about black and white color film, or but like the look of Mank. There's a couple things that kind of like, I don't think they're good or bad. I'm just like, why did you do that though?
Yeah.
So it's black and white with the fake pops and sounds, and it's got like a mono soundtrack instead of like, you know, the more modern universal like stereo designs. But the look of it, especially like Academy ratio for Citizen Kane back in the day, right? That was the look of movies because that's just how it was. Yeah. That's the film strips. That's how they were projected. The CinemaScope comes around 1953, I believe, which is when you get, you know, those glorious wide screens that John Carpenter and everyone loves to use and use to great effect. David Fincher has also used them to great effect.
No one's ever used it incorrectly. Oh,
so many people. All the time now. I don't know why. It doesn't make it look better. But Fincher and his cinematographer wanted to do that for this movie. The cinematographer, Eric Messerschmidt. They worked together on Mindhunter. But they're like, we don't want to just like reenact Citizen Kane. So let's not do 1.371. Let's go for 2.391. We'll go for the full scope range, and then we'll implement the post digital or post film look on the digital stuff later, and we'll shoot at 3200 ISO for more textured look, rather than the low ISOs of like 600, which is how like you mostly shoot your digital videos. Mm-hmm. On a standard digital camera, be it consumer grade or professional, like the Arri Alexa or the Red cameras that Fincher prefers, which is how he shot this one too. Mm-hmm. I don't know why when you make a movie that's about old Hollywood, I don't know why people just don't shoot an Academy ratio. Mm-hmm. If you're making a thriller, maybe this is just a personal hang up for me. But this is like the one time you can't experiment with like the old boxy aspect ratios. Yeah. And
well, it's just weird that's the one where they're like, we're not going to do that. Like, of all the stuff they're doing.
Yeah.
You know?
It makes it feel so much weirder when it's like, no, this isn't true. So this is where I think the movie gets really interesting. For me. I'm not telling anyone else it's interesting. For me personally. Is Fincher asking us to question the authenticity of this recounting in the film? We know he believes this, but is he asking us to question it because the mere presentation is false? And is the lack of authenticity and all these superficially added elements to make it look like a replica of old film, is like their inauthenticity like an admission to it not being real? Or is it just like making us ponder these things? I think that's more interesting than anything that happens in the movie, with maybe one or two exceptions of a performance. But it's stuff that's what I think about regarding Mank. I don't really think about like the writing or anything. Although I should also mention that this was written by David Fincher's father, who has since passed away. This was a project they worked on together for like 20 years.
Yeah, it was supposed
I think,
to be
or
his
something like
follow-up
that.
to like The Game.
Yeah.
And it would have had
So-
everyone's favorite guy, Kevin Spacey, as Mank.
You know, some things just work out better
Yeah.
in the long run. I'll say that. I think Gary Oldman's actually having a good time.
Thank God Gary Oldman's never done anything weird.
It is a little unfortunate that we got two Gary Oldman retrospectives in this
what
one.
are you gonna do?
Yeah. But yeah, so it's like when I hear that, I'm like, this is the one sentimental Fincher movie. I do feel...
I don't know. Benjamin Button's a little sentimental.
You know what? You're right. Forgot Benjamin Button.
Yeah.
A movie I've grown to love.
Which is the other one that people are like, no. Like, and I'm also on the Benjamin Button team. Like, I like that movie.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Although, I gotta say, like, a big thing for me, like, I've definitely cooled on Fincher as I've gotten older. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I just don't... His you know, like, his quote about, like, the audience are perverts, you know? Like, that's his whole philosophy. And... once you know that really about him and his relation to the audience, suddenly all his movies make sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like it. I don't like that mentality, you know?
I can understand.
I don't know if it's...
that.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I just don't like it.
Yeah, yeah.
And... I don't know how Mank fits into it totally, though. I mean, you have the whole, your take of, like, is it supposed to be... I mean, we have to remember, this is also a movie that's, like, it takes the structure of Citizen Kane, right? Like, it has the nonlinear structure. Mank is just, like, boozing hard and doing, like, fucking, like, he's taking way too many meds, like, as he's recovering. So there's totally an unreliable narrator thing you could be putting on there. And that's Citizen Kane as well. I mean, Citizen Kane has unreliable narrators, multiple unreliable narrators. We never really get to know Kane because we only get him through other people's perspectives, right? So he could just be playing with that. It feels more like that's what he's doing, is that he's like, of course Mank wrote Citizen Kane. He was writing his life. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And, my whole take is David Fincher Mank.
Oh.
Is David Fincher someone who's like, I fucking burned every bridge in Hollywood?
Huh.
Because I was laying down too many truths. I saw the threat of the Nazis before. That's a bad scene in this movie.
That's just not great.
It was like, they opened the first concentration camp today, and then the Hollywood elites are like, what's a concentration camp? And it's like, oh god, I'm watching this in the year 2020. But
you know what? I only mentioned Gary Oldman. I would say like 3 really great performances besides his. Amanda Seyfried.
She's good.
Seyfried?
Yeah.
She is so good in this.
Generally a good actress. I mean,
yeah.
She doesn't get enough credit for whatever reason.
Yeah, there was that bit where she was almost Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever, and I'm glad she wasn't that. But then I had this moment where I was like, oh, she could play Star-Lord, you know?
She could be in that type of movie.
Yeah. Not necessarily Marvel, but that type of movie.
She's great in First Reformed.
Yes.
in a
Yeah.
part that could like kind of be nothing, you know.
Yeah. Charles Dance.
Charles Dance.
I think Charles Dance is like a titan of an actor.
Finally reteaming with Fincher.
Yeah, Alien 3 reunion was I believe that was my response when the news broke that he was coming.
He kind of
back
gets the
for a Fincher
great
movie.
scene at the end where Oldman is like just going ham on a scene where he's just yelling at all the elites in Hollywood and fucking burning everything down, and it's just Charles Dance staring at him, and it's the best thing happening in the movie. Like,
Lily Collins, who I think is actually quite good in this, and I don't think she's really gotten a chance to shine in a lot of stuff she's done. And you know what? I'm gonna name one more actor who's really good in this. Do you know who I'm gonna say?
no, I don't actually.
Bill Nye.
Oh
as
yeah, Bill
Upton
Nye the
Sinclair.
Science Guy is Upton Sinclair.
Yeah.
Which is that is like a brilliant casting choice.
Yep.
That was one of those where it's like, you know, like I'm watching this at like 6 a.m. and like I'm half like I'm still waking up, and that Upton Sinclair scene happens, and then I'm like, is that Bill Nye? Like, did you have that moment, or did you know he was in it when?
I had no idea.
And the movie had just dropped, so like I couldn't like there wasn't information out there about it. Like I had to like wait like half a day. I think most people do their jobs in this movie, you know.
Yeah, no one's bad. in
Like
this
Arliss
movie, but
Howard,
those were the
as
ones
Louis
that
B.
really
Mayer is
stuck
pretty
out to me.
fun. Like he's just being a Hollywood dick, you know. There's the guy who gets like really sold down the river is fucking Tom Burke is Orson Welles, who's like barely in the goddamn thing.
Yeah. Also significantly older than
Yeah.
Orson at the time of this place.
Yeah, Orson,
Something that keeps
everyone
happening in this
how
movie.
old, what is he? He's like 20 something when he makes Citizen Kane.
He's 26.
Yeah, doesn't that make you just want
I
to throw
know.
yourself off a fucking bridge? Like,
I know.
motherfucker, like how
I'm gonna go buy a plane ticket for tomorrow morning, and then I'm gonna walk out of the plane
Yeah.
as it's taking off.
That's a great idea.
Whenever I hear that, I'm like, "What the fuck am I doing with my life?"
You could always be like, what was that guy on the Southwest flight where that guy got up on Southwest and was like, I'm gonna open this door, and then the passengers beat him to death, which is a thing that really happened. So
Mark Wahlberg was there. He's like, I got some stuff to make up
yeah,
for.
I gotta make up for 9/11. And the guy wasn't even talking about the plane door. He was just talking about the bathroom. Some guy had been in there too long. And Mark Wahlberg beat him to death. What a lunatic Mark Wahlberg is.
I know. Every once in a while, have you gotten those prayer app commercials?
No.
Or those advertisements?
No.
A lot of people are getting them. I'm getting them a couple times too on Instagram or like from scrolling through.
I'm getting a lot of
TikTok or something
religious
now.
stuff lately. There's definitely someone somewhere is like, now is the time to sell religion. Like,
Yeah.
clearly we're all panicking. And they're like, did you know that the Bible talked about pestilence and disease?
It's like Joel Osteen. He's like
Give me money for my car. Like,
for his 25 Ferraris or whatever the fuck.
what a
It's like at that point, just give you can give 10 of those away.
yeah.
Like I get you're greedy, but 10 of them.
You gotta understand,
you know?
all these people are Satan, and they're dragging us all to hell with them.
Oh no, 100%.
Like, these people are.
But I'm like,
insane.
I'm just gonna like DM Joel Osteen on Twitter, and I'll be like, hey, could I just have like 1 million? Like, just give me it.
The Lord
give me-
gave
you
me
don't
a
need that
sign
million.
and said, "You need to give me $10 million."
Yeah. You know what? I will actually DM Joel Osteen that, and I'll be like, the Lord has sent me a message for you to give me $50 million.
You know, we go like, I was standing outside today, and the clouds took on an unusual shape. I don't know what it means. And then you send him a picture, and it's the clouds photoshopped to say, "Send me millions of dollars." What could the Lord be trying to tell me? But hey,
Yeah.
but this is also a movie about fake news.
Oh yes.
Which was just like, it was one of those where like, this movie dropped like right after the election too. Like, where there was like, okay, Biden won, and Trump's saying that the election was rigged, but we'll see how far that goes. Turns out it went really far, but there was that weird, and this is a big part of this movie is the Hollywood studios conspiring to destroy organized labor in California. Which like should have made it like the movie of film Twitter that year, you know?
I know.
And
I think that reveals truly how much of a misfire this was.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as like a hater or even like disliker.
yeah, I don't
of this
hate
movie.
it. I'm just like kind of like like
Yeah, I mean sometimes stuff just doesn't work.
yeah. But it is weird where I'm like I should be loving this, but like I'm getting nothing, you know? Like
Yeah.
where it's like it is interesting to watch like okay, yeah, like this is the early version of like how people are being manipulated by media, something that happens to this day, right? That
Yeah.
and like this is like it's kind of trying to be a demystifying thing of media where it's like no, media isn't Citizen Kane and Orson Welles triumphing. It's these money men manipulating the popular sentiment, you know? And it's like, yes, Citizen Kane lasts in the long term, but the short term, these guys always win, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and it just doesn't work. I don't know. It is one of the more baffling, like why doesn't this work? And part of me just wonders if maybe we just all kind of got over Fincher at the same time, you know?
Maybe.
Like, The Killer, I guess, will be the test of that.
I am looking forward to that movie.
I was until you told me Michael Fassbender was in it.
Oh yeah, your least favorite actor.
Yeah. Also, you know what? I was not a fan of Mindhunter. I'm like the one guy on the planet that didn't like Mindhunter.
Oh yeah.
But
I think it's well made.
it's, you know what?
I like the cast.
It's fine. The cast is fine. There's good performances. There's a lot about that. First of all, criminal profiling is kind of like a pseudoscience.
Oh yeah,
which
yeah,
we've
yeah.
talked about. I think we talked about that during the Red Dragon episode.
Yeah.
But also recently, I kind of only watched the first season and a little bit of the second one. Isn't like the BTK killer like in the background of the show?
Yeah.
Like that's just silly. That's just silly.
Well, you know what they were going to do for the third season,
was
right?
it gonna be BTK?
Well, let me get this correct because this is actually pretty hype for take a film Twitter term, and it's not about BTK. I'm not hyping up BTK.
Diego hype for BTK.
No. So
Actually, he
I
had some good
believe-
points.
I believe for season 3 of Mindhunter, they were gonna do, they were gonna go to Hollywood, and they were gonna
fuck
cross over
you.
with the productions
Fuck you.
No, you're gonna love this. They're gonna cross over with the production of Michael Mann's Manhunter.
Oh, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Fuck that. Ugh. That sounds like the worst.
Yeah.
That sounds awful. Well, I guess
I think it could have been something.
I mean, it could have. The whole show could have been something. That something was called Hannibal, but
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing. In light of Hannibal, it's like you're doing crime TV shows.
Yeah.
It's like if you're not doing something on that caliber,
if you're
it's like,
not making
don't bother.
it gay as shit, what the fuck are you doing?
Oh, here's the other problem with Mank. So there's actor Holt McCallany, who has been in David Fincher's roster since Alien 3. He is not in Mank, which is why it's less good than his other movies.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
I guess I should also mention that they do a lot of day for night with black and white, which is significantly easier to do in black and white, which also allows them to use their deep focus shots, so everyone knows about the shutter speeds and all that jazz, right? Your focus, your f-stop on your camera. So you just shoot like a super low f-stop, like around, like my digital camera that I have goes down to 22. So that it's like really dark, so you need like as much daylight as possible. But then everything's in focus, and you can still pull back some shadow details. So there's like that sequence where Marion and Mank are walking around that little plateau with the fountain in the middle and stuff like that. Like that's a day for night shot. You can kind of see the shadows and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's pretty impressive stuff. It's just, like to what end?
Yeah.
That's
you know
just
what
my
I'm wondering
question.
if the recurring thing, because I started this episode by going in on fucking Babylon, do I just like, maybe I just don't like movies about movies.
But you like Nope.
Yeah, but like, but here's the thing. That's a coup. Like, it's not
Yeah.
overtly, because like, here's the thing. All movies are about movies, right? Like, that's the thing. You know, that's all about. When you watch a movie, it's about a movie. That's an extension of auteur theory. Like, a movie is about its director in a lot of ways, and that's true as much for something like Citizen Kane as it is for something like Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know? Mm-hmm. But some genius somewhere, like, really was like, hey, all movies are about movies, and then some directors decided, like, that's just going to be their thing, is that all their movies are going to be overtly about the fact that they're movies. Someone like David Fincher, for example, which has multiple movies where people just monologue directly at the audience about, like, you're not going to believe the shit you're about to see. I mean, that's Seven, right?
A little bit.
Where Seven, like, literally has John Doe being like, people are going to talk about what I've done for years to come. And it's like, that's what Seven is, you know? We're talking about it. That's what a movie is. The Game is 100% about filmmaking.
That one I see much more than Seven.
Fight Club is about filmmaking. To the point where it's about, like, one of the things in it is, like, editing film. Like, that's
fucking right.
One of the characters does it. Panic Room is a little more conventional, but it's also, like, that's where he starts going a little crazy with the camera, right? Like, the camera kind of becomes God in it. Like, it can go places where the human eye just can't. Zodiac is overtly about the audience and its kind of obsession with killers, you know? I mean, when there's the scene that where, like, Robert Downey Jr. goes, like, Zodiac's been lying. Like, half these crimes, like, he totally didn't commit. He's just taking credit for other crimes. And he's like, you almost seem disappointed. And it's like, he might as well be talking to the audience, you know?
Yeah.
Like, this is Fincher's thing. And I don't know if I like it anymore. I think I thought it was cool and clever for a little bit, and now I don't know. Because at some point, these guys, they can only make movies about those sorts of things, and they can't make a movie not about that, you know? They can't make a movie that, like, well, when you, like, I mean, you take that stuff away from Mank, what do you have, ultimately? And it's not much. What you have is Raising Cain, which is a bullshit story.
I think maybe that's the problem with it. Yeah, like, look, God bless Fincher and his father working on this together. I don't want to take anything away from that. It's clearly coming from a very personable place. But yeah, there's just not a lot here outside of that. And, you know, like I mentioned, Nope, and, like, yeah, it's smuggling in, like, a billion different ideas, obviously.
But it never forgets that it's a fucking movie about a giant UFO monster.
Yeah, and I think that's the real hat trick, at least, like, with...
But, I mean, Close Encounters is as much about movies as Nope is as well, you know? But it's also a movie that never forgets it's about fucking aliens.
Yeah, it's like you have to have more than just, like, this is about this.
Well, it's this, it's these weird, like, again, like, this is my coming back around to, like, yes, I'm on team artists, but also there's a lot of filmmakers and writers now that get high off their own farts. And they're just like, look how clever I'm being with this meta-textual shit. And I'm like, you forgot to make a movie. Like, you know? And I'm like, get that part right, and then do the other stuff, you know? And it leads to a lot of movies that are like, there's interesting ideas at play, but then the movie isn't there. And I'm not trying to do that from, like, a structure and be like, here's a movie, it's a beginning, middle, and end. Characters have arcs. Like, I'm not, like, you don't even have to do that, really. But you gotta do something. And you can't just do a movie about a movie. Unless it's gotta be really fucking good, you know?
Yeah.
And,
maybe it has to be Citizen Kane.
Maybe. I mean, it's gotta be that quality. And Mank... not even in that ballpark.
No. Does Mank stink?
Wow, you saved that one.
No, Ethan commented it under my letterbox thing after. I was like, yeah, I kind of liked it, like way back when, and that stuck with me. That's all I got going
How
on.
about
in my
that? How about the
life.
scene? How about the scene where it's we didn't even talk about that fucking who anyone even is in this goddamn movie.
I gotta be honest.
It don't matter. None of this matter. But
yeah.
Charles dances William Randolph Hearst at his fucking estate at the Hearst Castle, and they're having the costume party where it's circus themed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Mank comes in without a costume. And he's fucking tearing shit up, and it's because he's the monkey. He's the dancing monkey in the circus. It's all a show.
Oh, I never would have caught that had you
just-
not just told me that exact statement right now.
Pick up on that. It's the poster of the movie.
It's real clever shit. Real clever shit. So clever.
It's yeah.
All right, Mank. I think that's it.
I remember one person. I will say this: I have someone who's I know someone who's kind of a professional film critic, and they got to see Mank a little early, and it was so weird watching this play out, where they were like, I think it's a new high watermark for Fincher. They're like, this is like, he's done it again, like, and I cannot wait for everyone else to see it. Like, this person was like way early, like, this is Fincher's best movie. And then, like, to see it come out and basically no one having that response was kind of interesting to see.
Some people like it.
People like it, but no one was like, yes, Fincher's back, baby.
Let me see. Let me check the highest, or at least most popular review of Mank. The most popular reviews are like, oh my god. I'll read the most popular review right now by someone called Brat.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah. I got shot at on my drive home from watching Mank, and Mank was still the worst part of my night.
Yeah, people didn't like this movie.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mank.
And
would you recommend it?
I don't fucking know. The memes are funnier.
The memes are great.
I'd recommend watching anything Orson Welles made after Citizen Kane if you haven't seen it.
Oh yeah, do that.
He did a lot of movies that are just like genre exercises, and they're really good.
Yeah, check them out. And then save The Other Side of the Wind for last.
Honestly, Orson is one of those directors where you can kind of just go in order.
I generally I'd agree with that. I really think that one kind of benefits from at least having a couple in your back pocket.
That's what I mean.
You know?
It's the last one.
Oh, no, I thought you were saying you can go in any order.
No, I meant you can go Orson is someone you can go Citizen Kane, Ambersons, The Stranger, Lady from Shanghai. It totally works.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I thought you meant out of order.
No,
Sorry,
I did not
that's
mean
what I meant.
out
Yeah.
of order.
Yeah, okay.
Open your goddamn ears.
Yeah, Mank. It's no The Other Side of the Wind.
It's no Touch of Evil.
Yeah.
No, The Trial. It's no oops,
Chimes
Orson Welles
of
is in
Midnight.
blackface in Othello.
Ooh.
That was just an accepted thing for a long time.
It sure was.
I was like, yep, Othello, white guy.
It's a good thing we don't have any problems with race in this country anymore.
Thank God we defeated racism in 2008. We defeated that nasty dragon called racism with the power of voting. I don't know if you remember, Diego, but we all went down to the voting booths and we said, racism, And all those guys that were like, actually, we're still cool with racism, when the vote came in, they were like, all right, I guess we're not. I guess, nope, the votes came in. Racism is done. And by golly, they listened.
All right. Well, that's Mank. Time to pick the next
We barely
episode of the
talked
failed
about
award
Mank.
contender. Yeah, but we talked a lot about the stuff that went into
but I
the
also-
history of Mank.
Diego, you said you took a lot of notes, too. You did a...
Yeah, but it was mostly that technical stuff, and I kind of covered it fast enough. I don't need to spend more time on that.
I took about a half page of notes, and one of the things I wrote down that didn't come up was I wrote, looks like L.A. Noire. Remember that game?
Yeah.
I don't know why it made me think of that.
Real insightful.
It made me think of that. So, you want to talk about the bad side of auteur theory? You want to talk about the bad side of auteur theory? Look up the guy who did who was like the head of the LA Noire team, and you'll be reminded that some people are just the worst.
Oh, I don't know about this one.
It's
actually,
worth a read. Worth a read.
All right.
No like assault things. Just a heads up, but just being possibly the worst boss that ever existed.
Oh, okay.
So, little thing called crunch that seems to be a recurring problem in the game industry.
Yeah. Well, also VFX industry now.
Industry. I was gonna make a joke about like, imagine if you're making a movie and then like the last day it's like, okay, we got to shoot half of it, like, and then it's like, oh wait, like that's special effects now.
Yeah.
But don't worry, Diego, they just divert them to other movies.
Okay, you saw that article today too.
I saw the Ant-Man and the Wasp thing.
David Fincher's Ant-Man.
Oh God.
He could have made a fun heist movie.
He could have made a what?
A fun heist movie.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's what Ant-Man is.
Yeah, hey, that one's genuinely structured like a heist movie. Is it as successful as, say, Ocean's 11?
It's structured like a heist movie where everyone would get shot in the attempt.
I didn't say it was a home run. I just said
all those people went to jail.
No, it's got there's something to that first one. All right, now I got to pick the next failed award contender. All right, here we go. We have 5 left.
Okay, hold on before you spin it. Do you want to single out one to just be the definitive last one, like so we end on a good note, or you want to just keep it random?
You know what? Let's end with.
You can bleep it for. Okay, that's an interesting note to end on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna put finale in quotes.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that, and then that can give you some time to get a hold of a physical copy.
Yes.
Like that might be more the reason why it's the last movie.
See, I'm thinking ahead. That's all that is. All right, so I got 4 in the little designator. Let's do this. All right, next up, we're bouncing back with Ali.
Ali,
another biopic.
Oh boy.
We actually have, plus Ali, 2 biopics left in this one.
Yeah.
So. Actually, no, 3.
Okay.
Technically.
Oh yeah, what's the third one? That's not a biopic, you idiot.
Is it not?
No,
what is it?
It's just about It's just about.
Oh, okay. It's a documentary. I don't know anything about that one.
No, it was a TV movie.
Oh, okay. It's kind of a biopic, if it's about it.
The top review for on Letterboxd is 1/2 star.
Oh, good.
The other ones are 3.5, which a little closer to probably what it is. But hey.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's
all right. So
here's something. You know how like you did a ton of research for Mank and shit?
Yeah, and then it ended up not mattering that much.
Well, I have read 3 books now in preparation for.
Wow.
So, that's gonna be the one I'm gonna have. That's gonna be the 4-hour episode. And we're barely gonna talk about the movie. I'm just gonna talk about the actual events. So,
all right, but next week we're talking about Ali.
Ali.
Michael Mann's Ali. I'm very excited about that because no one seems to talk about that movie.
No one has any opinion on Will Smith movie where he hits people.
I was like, don't.
Yeah. I mean, what can we do now?
Yeah.
What can we do now? While that happened, and it is now the opening for this show.
Oh yeah. If that's too much, maybe I'll take it out. But
too late. Too late. Too late.
Should I add the noise next time? No,
No,
I
no,
wouldn't do
no.
that.
I think
No,
we're-
no,
I think
that's a
we're
bit
good.
much.
I think we're good.
No.
Um,
Yeah, this is Mank. Sorry.
this was sorry, Mank.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't know. I think we got a good conversation around the movie at least.
And Mank is dead.
Matt, links to your stuff in the description.
But what
I guess.
about the current Mank? What's his name?
Ben Mankiewicz.
Yeah, Ben Mankiewicz, who took over at the movies for like a minute with the other guy named Ben.
Yeah. Then he would do. I think he did the Young Turks.
He's on
run,
the.
and
I think
left
he's
that.
still. Is he still there or?
I'm not sure, but he did What the Flick, which was like their critic offshoot, which I watched.
Yeah, which
a lot.
that doesn't exist anymore. I don't think.
No, they I don't know what happened there. I think they just like lost funding.
Yeah.
And they pivoted to like full-time political.
Yeah,
reporting.
politics probably makes more money, frankly.
Yeah. But he still does TCM.
Yeah.
So
he's the guy. If you go to the movie theaters, he's usually the guy out in front, and like, hey, you're about to watch fucking The Girl Can't Help It.
He was also in White House Down, which I keep getting to bring up for some reason.
That guy's
There are so many ends to that movie
what
for
a
me.
weird
That's
career
strange.
that guy had.
Yeah, I like Ben Mankiewicz, unless there's stuff I don't know about. But
I mean, I think
like
he's
him.
I think he's a little more left than like Blue Check Lib, but he's probably still annoying.
Yeah.
I mean, he did take
out
over.
of-
He did take over at the movies from Ebert against Ebert Roper's wishes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, that was. I mean, that was a weird era. That was like when they came in. They brought Ben Mankiewicz, who at least had like credentials, and then another Ben that no one even remembers. And then,
Well, I think that's my thing with him is that like he's got credentials, and I even if I disagree with what he said, like having listened to his takes, like I'm like, all right, there's like reasons here.
Yeah.
You know.
the other Ben, Ebert wrote that article where he was like, here's what you shouldn't do as a reviewer. And he never mentioned the guy by name, but like he mentioned enough stuff that it was very clear who he was talking about.
Oh, there's probably like some NDA in place, and Ebert was like, how can I break this without breaking it?
I don't know if there was, because then like a year later, Ebert was like, yeah, it was about him. And then it was Michael Phillips and A.O. Scott for a little bit. They were the last guys to do it.
Who has shifted away from film criticism to book criticism because there's like no money in film criticism right now.
Really? That's weird. Honestly, that seems
Yeah.
weird. It feels like there should be money in film criticism.
Oh, you would think so.
I mean, I'm
You
not
definitely
I'm not saying like big money. I'm just saying like I guess I'm not even saying that there should be that much money. I guess what I'm saying is it feels like there should be more money than book criticism.
I guess so, yeah. Well, I don't know. Like the book industry is still like such a huge industry. It's just
yeah,
like,
but
not
like no
talked
one's
about a
getting
lot.
paid.
That
And also, like, they
yeah.
just tried to merge two of the big publishing people, and it failed. Which is good that it failed, but also, like, when that happens, Wall Street's like, the industry's dying!
Yeah.
So...
Well, I mean, just like since we're on the point, like A.O. Scott, like love or hate his work, like he was the New York Times film critic.
Is he just not anymore?
Like-
Is he completely done?
Yeah, the New York Times Company, their headline is From Culture to Book Review, a new chapter for A.O. Scott, no longer the New York Times film critic, yada, yada, yada.
Damn.
Yeah, he's just moving to book reviews now, which is a sad state of affairs for film criticism, not just because...
Well, maybe he can at
even
least
if I
get
don't
himself,
like his work,
get himself
you know?
away from that rag, the New York Times.
And that's a
Fucking
separate
piece
thing,
of
but yes.
shit paper, you
Yeah.
fucking bastards.
Yeah, fuck the New York Times.
Yeah.
What the fuck? This open transphobia bullshit,
The
endangering
weird
people's
fucking
lives. Go fuck
editorial
yourselves.
board, you fucks.
Yeah.
God damn,
Fucking-
there's like 6 newspapers left in this country, and that's what you devote column space to? You
Yeah.
fucking pieces of shit. But anyway, shout out to A.O. Scott.
Yes. Yeah.
And Michael Phillips, who I'm sure is a fine person too.
I remember watching some of his stuff at the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So support film critics you like. Check out their work. If they have something you can subscribe to support them, go do that. Fuck the New York Times editorial board, and I guess check out Mank if you're interested.
It's on Netflix for however long Netflix exists.
Yeah, and then watch The Other Side of the Wind, and then you're like, oh, all right, movies.
Yeah, watch The Other Side of the Wind, and then They'll Love Me When I'm Dead, because it looks like Netflix is starting to take like programming off.
Yeah. Hey, they were supposed to fucking release The Other Side of the Wind on Blu-ray by now.
Yeah.
What the? Where is that?
It didn't. I could have sworn they were like they announced they had given it to Criterion, but then something happened. Like,
I'm gonna investigate this after the show.
Is like the rights like coming back as someone being like, actually, I still own The Other Side of the Wind, which feels like it would happen.
Yeah.
Or was Peter
Classic Orson?
Or is like the contract like Peter Bogdanovich wrote? So long as I'm alive, it'll get a physical release, and then he fucking dropped dead. No. So I'm gonna miss Peter Bogdanovich just popping up in documentaries about old Hollywood.
Yeah.
I'd be like, who the fuck is this guy? Because I had no idea who he was for a long time. But hey, last movie, It Chapter 2. That's wild.
That's wild's a word for it. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you didn't like this episode. Like and subscribe anyway, because you might find something you do like. Thanks for listening. Again, thanks for watching. We have been professionally unprofessional.
Mank.